All right, guys, welcome to why having a great sidekick is almost, but not quite, impossible. Um, I think at any given time in our school, and I'm using like kind of a ridiculously high standard, but at any time in our school, you've got as many people can do 540s and backflips and aerials as can do a really, really clean sidekick. I think a great over the head, straight lines everywhere, near perfect trajectory sidekick has so many moving pieces. There's so many ways to goof it up that it should be considered at that level should be considered just a super advanced technique, which is weird because you learn the sidekick when you are a white belt, right? But there are just so many ways to get it wrong, and it all happens so fast, right? I'll just like in literally 1 second, there are like 4 or 5 like real sneaky ways to goof it up. All right, so I want to dig into this a little bit for anybody who's interested in having a truly outstanding sidekick. All right, so check it out. First issue. Most people can chamber their sidekick pretty well, right? But you could get a problem right in the chamber if you don't chamber up with your foot under your knee, all right? So here's what I mean. I slide in, correct, knee with the foot under it. Incorrect, here, but with the foot under it, will lead to a round kick trajectory, okay? So you've got to chamber up with the knee over the foot, all right? So that's fault, we'll call that fault number 1. Knee over foot is the correct position. The fault would be the foot comes under the butt instead. Okay, so let's say you cleared that hurdle, all right? You cleared that hurdle. You got your foot under your knee. Oh, you can't see that real well there. Okay, foot under the knee. Then you go to roll your hip. And when you roll your hip, that can be very problematic, all right? Two faults can occur, and sometimes they both occur when you roll your hip over, all right? So the first fault is that the knee will actually drop. So as I roll my hip, the shin bone starts to move toward this position where it becomes parallel to the ground, but the knee, see my knee actually dropped lower. And what that'll do, besides just looking ridiculous, is when you drop the knee, you will end up with a kick, and if you look at the trajectory of that kick, it's like the Nike swoosh sort of an angle, and you'll watch this fault in board breaking, and if I've got the board here, the kick comes up, slides off, doesn't break the board, but does a number on the fingertips of the people holding the board for you. So you can't drop your knee when you roll your hip over. One way to think about this is you've got a box here and a tabletop here. All right, so I actually have a box, which is weird. How often do you just have a box randomly when you want a box, but within reach? Okay, so stepping on the box will correct the first fault and put my foot under my knee, all right? So now I'm going to imagine that there is a table at about knee level right here, and when I roll my hip over, my shin becomes parallel to the ground, and that knee goes up on that table. It doesn't drop. Knee up on the table. Okay. So that's the second fault. We'll call that the dropping the knee fault. All right, so the first fault was instead of up on the box, we had the foot under the butt, okay? Second fault, you roll the hip over and you drop the knee down, the knee drop fault. So on that roll over part, for whatever reason, there is a tendency to change the angle at the knee. So this angle here is probably, if you chambered it real high, you probably have a little less than a 90-degree angle if you're doing it correctly. If you made fault number 1, you have a real acute angle there. Okay, here, when you roll over, do not change the angle at your knee, because if you set it up correctly in the first place, if you stepped on your box, you roll over and you change that angle so you could just pull that back to your butt and then be throwing a round kick again. You see how tricky that fault is it can show up in a couple different places, all right? So you have the foot under the butt fault, you have the drop the knee fault, and you have the change the angle at the knee fault, all right? Remember that all this happens so fast, right? This is why we got to be on the wall working on this all the time. Okay, so let's say you managed to chamber up on the box, keep the knee high, and not change the angle at the knee. Then you could drive out your side kick, making a line from your heel to your target, a straight line. And as long as you are fully pivoted and you get a nice straight line with your body, then you are in one of the very few who's in great shape with their side kick. Now you could do, if you're like most people and you have an okay side kick, you can spar with it, you can score points with your okay side kick, you can do it in a form, you can do it with some good power. It's not like the end of the world. Like, I'm not talking about this on a level where people are going to go, oh, did you see that guy? That was terrible. I just mean, once in a while you see a side kick and you go, whoa, what was that? That was incredible. Well, it's this, right? It's what I'm showing you. So, okay. Those other 2 points there at the end about fully pivoting and extending leg all the way, I feel like those are a little bit easier, but we can just cover those briefly, okay? So pivoting all the way means that you take the foot that's on the ground and you make sure that you turn it away from where your kick's gonna go. So if I'm gonna kick with this leg this way on the floor where you can't see, this standing foot needs to turn all the way to the back. That facilitates the hip roll that gives power to the extension of your kick, right? If you don't pivot, your hips won't roll, and you push your kick out and you just kind of bounce off stuff and you look pretty dopey while you're doing it. So you've got to roll over. The pivot. Now when you pivot on the ball of your foot. So you shift some weight to the ball of your foot, you pop, and that heel swivels inward like this. Boom, you kick out. All right. Now, so that would happen here. That would happen on the roll. I'm pivoted on the floor, haven't changed my angle. Now I can kick out, boom, straight, and then do I have a straight line from my heel all the way up to my shoulder? I do. I've got a real nice looking side kick at that point. Okay, a couple other things about different kinds of side kicks, and I think we mentioned this in another video, but if you have a side kick that is a spin or a shuffle or I guess different kinds of jumps, jump spin, whatever you're doing with your side kick, a lot of times you will not actually hit that upright chambered position. You won't actually hit this position at all because you are pre-pivoting the standing leg and pre-rolling your hips. By the time you actually lift your leg up, you're going to lift right to this shin parallel to the ground position. So an example would be like the shuffle. If I shuffle side kick, see I've rolled over as I shuffled and I never made it up to here because that would just slow down my kick and make it weaker. If you spin, you don't, if you spin, you do not spin to this upright position because then you have overspun. My hips should never make it to you guys. My hip should stop on my spin side kick here, and that makes my chamber parallel again, boom, my hips stay to the back, all right? So only on like a real traditional side kick would you get to that upright chambered position and then roll and then punch it out back and then right yourself again. But that is sort of the real classic traditional technique on the thing, and it is worth working on just for the sake of pursuing a really beautiful thing in our art that not a lot of people can do well. All right, cool. Happy sidekicking.